It's not Rosh Chodesh today. No, if it's for a Rosh Chodesh shiur, one would think that it would be Rosh Chodesh, but it's not. I also don't like the way they say Rosh Chodesh in English. They say the new moon. Correct? The word Chodesh, month, is connected to something new. In Hebrew, lehitchadesh, to become new. And it seems to be that a basic idea in Judaism is that we have the ability or the responsibility. Anytime you have the ability, it becomes responsibility. And that is not to let things become old. See, there are too many single people here now, so I can't talk about this. I got their attention now. That the cycle of the moon, where it disappears, it comes back, it becomes full, is closely related, not just biologically, but also in terms of halacha. It's closely related to a cycle, to a woman's cycle. And in terms of a relationship, there's something which becomes new. There's a separation, comes together, and that newness has kept marriages together for years and years. But this idea of chodesh and hitchadshut and being new is not something which is only within a marriage. It's also within learning. I just want to thank a couple of people. And I'm going to teach something at some point, but I want to start with saying a couple things on a personal level. First of all, I want to thank Rabbi. I don't think that when you introduced her, you embarrassed her sufficiently. I want to thank you for your dedication, your tenacity, and for making me come here, and that was last time. And somehow for making me forget about last time and getting me to come again. So kol hakavod, and you should keep on being involved in things which are holy. So my wife and I, and the reason we're here is because, this is a lot more complicated than you would think. The reason we're here tonight is really because, for some silly reason, after 27 years of being an unofficial rabbi in one shul, I got talked into becoming an official rabbi of another shul. I know that this doesn't sound like it has anything to do with anything, but it does. That's why we're here today. Because I had to get away from the shul. No, not exactly. The reason is that once I became this rabbi of the shul, I suddenly found that I had these responsibilities, and around 6 weeks ago, my parents had their, I'm going to lose count now, their 23rd I don't know the number. The 14th great-grandchild. And we were going to go up for the Brit. My sister had another grandson. We were going to go up for the Brit, and we couldn't. The Brit was on Friday after. We couldn't go. And my wife was very upset. And she said to me, it's so important to me to be by family occasions. I just feel terrible that we can't go. And she says, I know that we have to stay for Shabbat. We had to stay for Shabbat. It was a bar mitzvah. I don't want to get into any details, but it was somebody that we really needed to be there. But by the way, not because he was the wealthiest person in the community, quite the opposite. It's a child who's being brought up by his father by themselves. There's no one else there. And I made sure that the community made a bar mitzvah for him. And then some people said, we're making the bar mitzvah. How can you not be there? So I said, you're right. I need to be there. So my wife said, I want to be. It's important to be by family occasions. By the way, that's a very important thing. She's right. She's right. Family is family. We need to be by family occasions. So I looked at the calendar, and we knew that we had a bar mitzvah this weekend, but the truth is it was too much money. And the truth is that how could we just get away for a weekend? And the truth is that life is too complicated, and we have kids at home, which we forget about sometimes. They forget as well, but we forget about. But I said, you're right. Family is family, and we'll come. We'll figure out a way to come. And right afterwards, Robin said, so are you going to be around? And next thing I know, that I'm here. So I'm here because my wife wanted to be bar mitzvah on Shabbat, And it's all b'schut of my wife, so therefore I want to thank her. But the truth is, it's not just thanking her for this, it's thanking her for everything that I do. And it's thanking her for helping me do what I do. And it's not really fair because I stand up and I get the applause and I get people to say thank you and I get the attention, where I know that it's a cliche to say, no, my wife. No, this is not a cliche. I can absolutely assure you that she has at least equal responsibility in the things that I do. So I thank you for, embarrassed you enough now? Helene, I may have to take you up on that offer of the couch, okay? Okay. And we'll start learning in a second, I said. When we moved to Israel, and this was 28 years ago, I know some of you are going to tell me that's more years than you've been alive. That's of no interest to me. When we moved to Israel, there was very little hesitation. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you the truth, there was no hesitation. We got married. We had our Sheva Brachot. We had our last Sheva Brachot, I'm sure you remember, on the way to the airport. We stopped in a restaurant on the way to the airport. We had Sheva Brachot. We got on a plane. We moved to Israel. And that was it. We were back a couple times since then, but that was it. We left, and again, there were no hesitations. One of the things in the back of my mind that bothered me is that I had a suspicion that if I stayed in America, that I could have been a successful rabbi. Don't ask me why. I had a suspicion like this. And I'm sorry if it sounds arrogant, it's okay. And I had a feeling that if I moved to Israel, I would not be successful. Language, culture. And I really, really felt then that if I could make a living doing whatever it is, it'll be worthwhile because that's where we need to be. That's where Jews need to be. And I'm sorry, I won't give you a long speech about Israel. I won't give you too much guilt about it, but it's true anyway. And something happened along the way, and this is magic. In 1996, and I don't know why it happened, but in 1996, I decided that I need, by the way, 1996 is a long time ago also, right? I decided that I needed to do something to keep in touch with my students who had learned with me the year before in Bar Ilan University. And I sat down and I decided to write up a class that I had given them the year before in the Parsha. And I sent it the first year to 50 people. And by the way, if anyone ever writes the history of the Torah on the internet, it was one of the first classes that came over the internet. And within the next year, it went up to 300 people. And within the next year, it was up to more than that. And soon we had 3,000 people, and it went up more than that, and so on and so forth. And through the internet, I was able to have impact back on this community, which we turned our backs on a long, long time ago, and went and moved to Israel. And it seems that we're able to do both, that I can live there and still have an impact over here, although, not although. It's something which God has his plans and God uses us, and sometimes we just need to be able to be used the way that God wants to use us. And that's also, I think, a very important lesson. I want to thank a couple of people. First of all, Steve Geller is here together with his wife. And Steve once called me up. How do you get my phone number?
I think I emailed you, yeah.
No, Steve emailed me. He didn't call me. He emailed me. Sorry. He emailed me. And I'd never met him before. And he thinks he's special because he emails me and he says, I'm your biggest fan. So I get emails like this every now and again. I ask my wife all the time, I said, you get emails like this? And she says, no. I just people telling me they want to sell me medication. But people send me these things. And he goes, I'm your biggest fan. If you're ever in New York, then give me a call. So I was in New York and I called him and I said, hi. He goes, who is this? I said, I thought you were my biggest fan. I thought you... So then I met Steve. He really is my biggest fan. There's nobody close. But there have been hundreds and there have been thousands of people like this, and it's to me it really is humbling. There's somebody else who called me out of the blue, never met him before, sent me an email. You ever in New York, come, I'd love you to speak my community. He's become one of my closest friends, and he sponsored not this book, he sponsored the book on Bereshit, and he sponsored the book on Vayikra, which is out as well, and that's a fellow by the name of Raymond Gindi. Any of you who do shopping by Century 21, I can tell you right now that the money goes to publish my books. The store is Century 21, the Shomer Shabbos people keep Shabbat, people that are religious people, and the books that have come out have been sponsored by his family. Shemot was sponsored by somebody from Los Angeles named Mitch Julis. Mitch is one of the kindest, most generous people in the Jewish community. The only reason you don't know his name is because a lot of you are from New York and you're not from Los Angeles. If you're from LA, you would know who he was. Anyway, these people have made these books possible, and they've, just to give you a hint, they said any more books that are going to come out, they're willing to sponsor as well. So Vayikra is out already in Israel. It's going to get to here soon. And Bamidbar is in production. Devarim will take a while, at least over the summer, maybe longer. Devarim will take a while, and God willing, that will happen as well. Let's learn a little bit. The reason that I chose the title for today's talk, Salvation and Sanctity, is because that's the title that I chose for Shemot. And the truth is, that's what the book is about. The book of Shemot is the book about salvation and sanctity. Do we know what those words mean? Salvation means to be saved. Salvation or redemption. And sanctity means holiness. The book of Shemot really takes these two issues. Although, if you ask most people, what is the book of Shemot about? They'll say it's about the Exodus. Right? What's it called in English, actually? Exodus. So what's the problem with that name? That only takes you till which chapter? What? Not even 21. Takes you to maybe 15. How many chapters are there? 40. So it's a little, again, if it's, the book is the Exodus, they leave Egypt by the 15th chapter. There's a whole bunch of other chapters there. Okay, what happens then? They stand by Mount Sinai, but that's not enough. Something else happens. I want to read to you the introduction of the Ramban to Shemot. Now, there's something very specific about the Ramban as well. Why the Ramban, of all people, am I quoting tonight? I'll tell you. When I was young, I had the privilege of studying with some of the best rabbis in the world. I studied with Rabbi Soloveitchik for 3 years. I studied with Rabbi Lichtenstein for 4 years. One of my meetings with Rabbi Lichtenstein, I asked him, which commentary of the Torah do you like? And I knew what answer he was going to give. He said the Ramban. So I said, why? So he said, because the Ramban will quote the rabbis, and then after quoting other people, he'll say, but this is what I think. He says the fact that the Ramban isn't just quoting others, but he's personally involved in learning. Rabbi Lichtenstein said he felt that that was so important. And if anybody's ever read any of the things that I've written, I think you can feel that as well. He said, I don't just quote other people, I also tell you how I feel. I also tell you what I think. And you're allowed to disagree with me. And I write what I write because things become new. And that's also part of hitchadshut, is that when we learn Torah, it needs to be new. The Ramban over here tells us, Hishlima katuv sefer Bereshit shu sefer Yitzirah, b'chidush ha'olam v'yitzirat kol notzar v'mekrei avot, shehem ke'inyan yitzirat lizar'am, v'bnei shakol mekreihem tzirei dvarim l'rmoz l'udiya kol atid lavo lahem v'acharei shehishlim ha'yitzirah hitchil sefer acher v'inyan ha'ma'aseh haba min ha'rimazim. Now let me explain, translate. The book of Bereshit is the book of the fathers. The book of Shemot is the book of the children. The book of Bereshit is a book of theory. The book of Shemot is a book of action. All of the things that the Avot did, the Ramban tells us many places, creates an impact for the children. And I want you to understand something. We can say the Avot, the patriarchs, those who lived a long time ago, the matriarchs. That's not the only understanding of this. This is also true in our lives. We, as parents, have impact on our children. The actions of the fathers are a sign for the children. This is true in a profound, mystical way. Again, I'll give you a short example that I taught Sydney, and you can ask if she heard it in class this week. When Sarah goes down to Egypt, Avraham feels threatened. Sarah is taken to the palace. Paro tries to put a hand on her, and what happens? The whole palace gets struck with plagues. The whole palace gets struck with a plague. And Abraham then leaves with great wealth. Don't you realize that's a microcosm of the story of the Jews who go down to Egypt? The men are threatened. They wanted the women, which is why they threatened the men. Plagues come, and the Jews leave with great wealth. Now, is that a coincidence? Is that history repeating itself? What the Ramban would say is the reason the Jews were saved in Egypt was because Sarah was saved. The spiritual power that was unleashed when Sarah is saved is the power that saves all of the Jewish people afterwards. And I'm going to say it again. Things that we do, even before we're parents, can impact our children later on. I know there are a lot of people that think, okay, when I'm young, I can do what I want. Then when I get married, I'll settle down. Then I have to get serious. No. Things that we do impact later on. This is what Bereshit is about. I'm skipping a little bit. And he says, this book, the new book Shemot, is a book about ma'aseh. It's a book about action. ואלה שמו בעניין הגלות הראשון, הנגזר בפירוש ובגאולה ממנו, ולכן חזר והתחיל בשמות יורדי מצרים. I'm going to skip again. כי ירידתם שם הוא רשת הגלות מאז הוחל. והנה הגלות איננו נשלם, which means the slavery experience, the exile is not finished. Ad yom shuvam el mekomam ve'el ma'alat avotam yashavu. Until they return to their place and return to the level of their ancestors or of the fathers, till they get to that point. Now, this is a very strange sentence. What the Ramban is saying over here, I'm going to spend the rest of today just explaining this one line. What the Ramban is saying over here is that the exile is not over when we leave Egypt. Right? You could have said, as soon as we walk out of Egypt, that's it. Exile is over. We're free. Where do we get to? Okay, we get to the desert, or are we free? No, that's not it. We get to Mount Sinai. No, that's not it. We need to return. First of all, he does mention our land, which for the Ramban is a big point, but I told you I wasn't going to pick on you about that. We'll leave that. Till we return to the level of the ancestors. What in the world does that mean, the level of the Avot? We have no idea what the Avot were like. We can't fathom it. You know, I think especially the people over here who are originally from the Mashadi community, originally people from Persia, can appreciate the threat that takes place right now coming from Iran towards Israel. If God came to any of us and said, you know what, I'm going to destroy all of Iran, it'll all be gone, what would we say? Thank you, right? What did Avraham say? Avraham said, maybe there's 50 righteous people. Again, I have to appreciate something. What did Avraham teach the world? Avraham taught the world about chesed, about kindness, about decency. Who were the most undecent people? Is that undecent? Indecent. I say indecent, people have different things in their mind. They are the most terrible, unkind, lacking any, again, shred of decency. Wouldn't Abraham's world be a better place if there was no one left in Sodom? Wouldn't Abraham's mission been easier to accomplish if there was nobody left in Sodom? Which means, if we were Abraham and we wanted to teach kindness, and God comes to us and says, Abraham, I got some good news and bad news. He goes, okay, go ahead. I'm getting rid of stone. So what would you then say? What's the bad news? Right? We would be going, go for it. I got your back. Go, take him out. And what does Abraham say? Well, maybe there are 50 righteous people. Maybe there are 45 righteous people. Maybe there are 30 righteous people. That Abraham is praying for Sodom to save a corrupt society? Yes. That's what Abraham prays for. And by the way, don't make a mistake about it. When Abraham experiences a famine, he specifically goes to Egypt, which is a corrupt place. Why? Okay, you're going to say because he wants food. Could be a whole other reason. Could be the reason he goes there is because he realizes, if I can turn Egypt around and make Egypt into a God-fearing place, then maybe we can turn the whole world around. See, we don't think like Abraham. We don't act like Abraham. Abraham really believed he can change the world. Abraham really believed that the world could be redeemed. Abraham really believed you can go to the worst possible places and you can change it. That's why he goes down to Egypt. And by the way, again, don't make a mistake about it. Egypt is an immoral place. Sarah is there for 5 minutes and somebody grabs her. Yosef is there for 5 minutes and somebody hits on him. Egypt is an immoral place. And that's where Avram chooses to go. Again, I would have to believe there are other places he could have gone. But why? I also appreciate now, when the children went down, I'm going to tell you something I heard from Rabbi Soloveitchik. Nobody knows this, so it's good that you listen to this. Do you remember when Moshe, this is coming up, Moshe is told by God, go and ask if you can leave for 3 days. And what does Paro say? Absolutely not. What would have happened if Paro said, sure, 3 days, no problem, go? What would have the Jews have done? What would have Moshe have done? Sneak out afterwards, after 3 days? Oh, listen, by the way, we're going? Is that the way that God needed us to leave Egypt? To sneak out in the middle of the night, make believe we're coming back and not come back? Is that really the way that we're supposed to leave Egypt? You all appreciate the question, right? Yes? Why ask for 3 days? And what if Paro would have said yes? Rabbi Soloveitchik suggested that when the Jews got down to Egypt, they had a job to do. What was the job to do? To teach about God. What were we supposed to do? We were supposed to change the Egyptian society. What was supposed to happen? What was supposed to happen is that after 200 years in Egypt, when we come and say, God wants us now to come to Mount Sinai, that Paro and all the Egyptians should have said to us, please go there. Go and get the Torah and bring it back to us and tell us what God wants of the world. But you know what? We didn't do that. We became assimilated when we were there. We have a job to do. Avram understands that job. Avram, when he's told that things will be destroyed, I don't want it destroyed. So now, this is scary because we're told that the Exodus is not going to come to an end until we reach the point of getting to be like the Avot. I want to read one verse which I think contains within it an understanding of what the Avot were like, and I'm going to really try to make sense of this. There's a verse which is very easy to misunderstand. It's actually the longest chapter in the book of Bereshit, chapter 24. We're told there that Avraham needs to find a wife for his son, sends off his servant, goes back to Avram's hometown, You wanted something controversial? I'll say something controversial. I've said it, I'll say it again. When Avraham's servant goes and looks for a wife, he gives one test. What is the one test that he gives? And what is the test? A test of kindness. Does he check how long her skirt is? No. Does he check if she believes in one God? Matter of fact, the family she came from had a lot of people that didn't believe in one God. The Ran, who died 700 years ago, and it's a good thing he's dead or he'd be excommunicated for what I'm about to say, he said the reason that he tested her kindness and not her belief system is that it's easier to change belief system than to change one's character. And his character, very difficult to change. Belief, you've got to teach them. Belief, you teach somebody. Give them information. Educate them. Meaning he had full confidence that she's going to come to Avram's tent and be transformed in terms of belief. But in terms of character, how do you change character? I want to see one rabbi get up and say that it's preferable to marry a woman who's not religious as long as she is a nice person and a kind person. No one's going to say it. The Ran said it. And the Ran said that's what Avram was looking for a daughter-in-law. I'm not saying this to confuse everybody. I'm saying this because sometimes we need to know what's important. Again, decency is important. That's what Avram was looking for. Kindness is important. And I wish I can say that kindness and decency go along with keeping Shabbat and keeping kosher. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. And unfortunately, in schools, we tend to teach micro issues about kashrut and about Shabbat, and we forget to teach decency. And unfortunately, common decency is no longer common. It's okay. Neither, what other things do we decide isn't common? Common sense isn't common. What else isn't common? Common knowledge isn't common. Actually, most of the things we say are common are no longer common. So what happens when he brings her back? It says, Vayiveha Yitzchak ha'oala Sarah imo. He takes her to Sarah's tent. Vayikach et Rivka v'tihilo li'isha. And he took Rivka and she became his wife. Vayaveha. And he loved her. By the way, this is the first time the word love is used in the Torah. This is the first relationship that we're told. I'm not saying Avram and Sarah didn't get along. I'm not saying they didn't love one another. But what I am saying, this is the first time that we're told about love. He loved her. And now the reason I'm stressing this, because the next part's going to get you confused. Vayinachem Yitzchak acharei imo, and he was comforted for the loss of his mother. So now you're going to start with the Oedipal things, Oedipus, his mother, and he loved his wife, and so on and so forth. It just says that he loves her. If he just said he loved her, then don't tell me he doesn't love her and he's looking for a replacement for his mother. That's not what's going on. He brings her to his mother's tent. Okay, some of you would think that's a little strange. Rashi over here tells us he takes her to his mother's tent and she became like his mother. V'na'asit dugmat Sarah imo. He became like his mother. He Sarah imo shekol zman shesara kayemet hayaner daluk mi erev Shabbat le'erev Shabbat. That Sarah would light the Shabbat candles, and miraculously they would last all the way to the next Friday night. Ubracha mitzuya be'isa, and there was a blessing on her dough, on her bread. Va'anan kashor ohel, and there was a cloud tied to her tent. Umishameta pasku, and when Sarah died, all these things stopped. Ukishabat Rivka chazru, and Rivka came into the tent, all these miraculous things returned. So what are these things? The candles, she would light the candles. The food that she would make was blessed. By the way, many, many Jewish women have the same thing. How many Jewish women overcook? Yes? How many cook too much food? Is this a genetic issue? Does it make a difference, Ashkenaz or Sfarad over here, or this is a... So next time your husbands complain, except for you, the next time your husbands complain, you say, this is the bracha of Sarah Imenu. That there was a blessing in the bread. There was always too much food. That's the blessing. There's a blessing because always there may be guests that come in. Not everybody thinks this way. Episcopalians don't think this way. Okay, I can assure you they don't think this way. They don't cook once a week saying, well, we may have guests. Guests may show up. Who goes thinking guests may show up? Jews think guests may show up. Why? Because you may bump into somebody by shul and say, oh, why don't you come over? Your kids may bring home an extra 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 friends. Okay, you want there to be food. Do I have to explain this to you? But next time someone complains, that comes from Sarah. That's what Sarah did. When Sarah died, it stopped. How did it start up again? When Rivka walked into the tent. Now there was too much food again. Any Jewish man who's not overweight, it's a miracle, by the way. But it also says that there was a blessing, that there was a cloud connected to the tent. Those of you who were paying attention back in Bereshit will know that the same cloud is described when Avraham Avinu gets to the Akedah. It says he sees the place from afar. The reason why it's a little difficult is God never told him which place it is. God said the place, I'm going to show you. He goes, God never says it to him, but he says he sees it from afar. Rashi, quoting the Midrash, says he sees a mountain with a cloud tied to it. This I wrote about in my first book, the book that you have there. He sees the cloud, and he turns to the 2 men who were with him. He turns to Yishmael and says, what do you see? He says, I see a big mountain. He says, okay. Turns to Eliezer, what do you see? He says, I see a big mountain. He says, okay. He turns to Yitzchak, and he says, what do you see? He says, I see a mountain with a cloud tied to it. He says to the other 2, you guys stay here with the chamor. What does chamor mean? That's not what it means here. I'll explain to you in a second. But it means donkey, but it's not what it means. He says, you wait here with the chamor, and I and the boy will go and serve God. Now, we have to appreciate, this was Avraham's greatest test, the most difficult moment of his life. He says to the other 2, if you don't see the cloud, stay with the chamor. The word chamor is the same word as chomer. Chomer means the physical. If you can't see the spiritual, you stay down here with the physical. You can't see the cloud, the ethereal, the spiritual, then stay over here with the chomer, with the physical. I and the boy will go up, bow down to God, serve God, and come back to you. By the way, Rabbi Soloveitchik stressed that as well. He says too often Jews forget about that part. Which part? That we're going to go back, and sometimes to find spiritual greatness, we need to separate from others. Sometimes we need to go and we need to study. Sometimes when everyone else is going off to a party or everyone else is going off to college, we need to sit and to study. We need to grow. But what does Avraham continue to say? And then we're going to come back to you. And everything that we learned and everything that we experienced, we're going to come back and share with you. Because it's not enough just to go and to spend time on yourself. You need to share as well. Avram says we're going to go up, which is great. You're stuck with the chomer. You're stuck on the physical level. You don't understand spirituality. Fine. We will go be involved in the spiritual, and then we're going to come back and share. And there's a problem in the world today. The problem is all the people that are involved in study but forget to share. That's a problem. I mean, all the times that I hear how many people are studying, it's wonderful. It's wonderful how many people are studying Torah, but they forget to share sometimes. And anything that we study, we need to share. Again, how else do we change the world? It doesn't happen by itself. Now, if you haven't caught my point yet, the greatest moment in Avraham's life, when he's so focused and so dedicated and willing to sacrifice the thing which he cherishes most, the son that he waited for all these years, he has an epiphany, and he sees the spiritual, he sees the cloud. It's unbelievable. And now do you all realize something else? That Sarah saw that cloud every single day without climbing a mountain. Sarah was on the same spiritual level every single day as Avraham was when he went to do the Akedah. That's exactly what the Midrash is telling us. That is what the tent of Sarah is. Did you realize the elements within her tent? What does it affect? It affects the candle, it affects the bread, and it affects this cloud. There's a passage in the book of Melachim that talks about the Shunamit. It says that the Shunamit decided to make a room for Elisha. Right? Do you all have a spare room in case a prophet comes by? No. It's worthwhile to have in your house. But Tomer El Isha, she says to her husband, Hinena yadati ki ish Elokim kadoshu over aleinu tamid. I know that this spiritual man, this man of God, passes through town continually. Your parents have a room for prophets, no? I've seen prophets there. No, I've seen others there as well. Nasena aliyat kir ktana. We make a little room, a little attic. V'nasimnu sham mita v'shulchan v'chisei u'menorah. V'yabivo o'eleinu yasur shama. We're going to make this little room for him, and I don't want to make this too complicated, and I am not going to explain the details. The Kabbalists, starting from the Zohar through the Arizal, tell us that these elements are actually the elements of the Beit HaMikdash. The Beit HaMikdash has a menorah. The Beit HaMikdash has a shulchan. What sits on the shulchan of the Beit HaMikdash? The bread. The Beit HaMikdash has all of these same elements, which means if you really understand what I'm trying to say, the tent of Sarah has the same holiness to it that the Beit HaMikdash had. The cloud, the spiritual, the ethereal, which was connected to her tent all the time, the blessing on the fire, the blessing on the bread, that's exactly the miracles that took place within the Beit HaMikdash. This little room that was made for the Navi, it's the same exact elements of the Beit HaMikdash. And I want to try to take this full circle so that you understand what I'm trying to explain. The Ramban told us that we are not truly free until we get to the level of the Avot. What exactly is the level of the Avot? And I'm going to say this on two different levels. On the one hand, if I'm going to be rational, every now and then we need to be rational. If I'm going to be rational, I'm going to say, and don't yell at me, just reading the verses, reading the text, Avraham Avinu did not have the Torah. He believed in God, but he didn't have all the mitzvot that we have. The Gemara says that Avraham was mekayem the Torah. He fulfilled the Torah, which means one of two things. It either means literally he did the mitzvot, or what I think is far more likely is that Avram was on the same spiritual level that we are on when we do the mitzvot. He was mekayem the Torah. He fulfilled the Torah. Let me give you an example. I, and hopefully half the people in this room, put tefillin on this morning. I won't discuss the other half. If I put on tefillin this morning, I hopefully achieved some kind of spiritual enlightenment and fulfillment when I did it. Should I now think that I am therefore on a higher spiritual level than Avraham, who most likely never put tefillin on in his life? So am I on a higher spiritual level? The Gemara says Avraham fulfilled the mitzvah of tefillin. What does it mean he fulfilled it? He got to the same spiritual accomplishment that I need the tefillin to put on. He did it without it. Avraham got to the same level that we do on Yom Kippur. Anybody have a hard time praying? You notice how easy it is to pray in Yom Kippur? Oh, suddenly your life hangs in the balance. Who's going to live and who's going to die? And suddenly people wake up, it gets a little bit easier. It's very easy to pray. Just start thinking of all the bad things that can happen to you. It gets easier to pray. Avram Avinu was able to pray every single day like we do on Yom Kippur. He didn't need Yom Kippur. Avraham was able to be on a level as if he were the Kohen Gadol in the Holy of Holies in Yom Kippur. And now, I'm going to go one step further. You know who else was on that level? Sarah. That was her tent. Her tent had the same elements to it as if it were the Beit HaMikdash. Now, everything I'm saying right now is very dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because someone's going to come back and say, you know what? I understood what you were trying to get at. What you're trying to get at is the main thing, what the things that I said. The main thing is to be a good person and you don't really have to believe in God. The main thing is to be a good person, you don't have to be religious. The main thing is to be a good person and you don't have to do any of the other things. The main thing is really to have in your heart good things and then any of the mitzvot you do are not important. Okay? That's not what I said.
Okay. I got worried. I was happy actually not.
Just watch it. Excuse him. He's a West Coast Persian. West Coast, it's like the rappers, like there's East Coast and West Coast rappers. They don't get along. Is that like, what are they? What was that? Who? No. I've never seen him silent before. But I heard he's good marriage material. We could talk afterwards. Okay, anyway. That should be the end of him. It's not what I'm saying that we don't have to do mitzvot. Quite the opposite. The avot did not have to do the mitzvot because they were on a spiritual level and they fulfilled them. Once we stood at Har Sinai, the whole world changed. The process, therefore, which takes place is we go from this incredible spiritual level of the avot, we go down into Egypt, we pass by Har Sinai, and now all the things which they accomplished through their intuition, and through their spirituality, and through their decency, God gave us commandments to do that we need to achieve the same level. But what's the problem? That we can build a Beit HaMikdash, we can build a Mishkan, we can build the menorah, we can build the Shulchan, we can have all of these elements, and we're still not on the same level as the avot. That's the problem. Is that sometimes we fall into a trap and we think that we just have to do all these things and that's enough. There's a checklist. Again, get up in the morning and put on the tefillin and then, go like this a little bit. And basically I did what I need to do. No. It has to get inside of us. The level of the avot, that's what true freedom is. That's what true liberation is. True liberation is going back to the level that the avot achieved, which means as far as the Ramban is concerned, the book of Shemot doesn't end when we geographically leave Egypt. The slavery doesn't end even when we stand at Har Sinai. Slavery doesn't end till we get back to the level of the avot, and the question is, have we really accomplished that yet? It seems to me that what we need to do is to fuse these two elements together. We need to do the mitzvot, but we need to embrace decency. We need to do the mitzvot, and we need to allow the mitzvot to transform us. We need to do the mitzvot, and we need to become very good people. We can't do the mitzvot and use that as an excuse as why we didn't become the people we need to become, because we are religious and we already did everything we need to do. What the Ramban is telling us, that's not freedom. You're still slaves if you do that. That's still slavery. What liberation means is to have two elements. Is to be free. By the way, that's why I named the book Salvation and Sanctity. Salvation is the leaving of Egypt, but it doesn't happen until we become holy. But we only become holy when we allow the holiness to take over ourselves. And we're scared of holiness. We are absolutely petrified of holiness. We're also scared of being religious, by the way. I once, years and years ago, and and I've seen this many times since. If you ask a group of students, how many of you would want to become more religious? So aside from Robin, no one's going to raise their hand. If you ask, how many of you want to become more spiritual? Everybody raises their hand. Because spirituality is cool. Spirituality is in. Religious, that's not so good. And the bottom line is that these things need to be the same. We need to allow our religiosity to make us spiritual as well. And when we accomplish that, and only when we accomplish that, then we're really free. Thank you very much.
Interesting definition of the word spiritual. It's a combination of spirit.
Robin, is there any signing right now? Guys, Rabbi Kahn's going to be signing his new book, Echoes of Eden, on Sefer Shmot, outside now. What? Yeah,
Do you like it?
not, yeah.
Okay.
How do we,
Nice.
Robin.
Having Agvid also.
Oh, good.